the body, until one is absolutely clear that one is existence, consciousness place, which does not age, which does not die, which does not get indigestion, and which does not get aches and pains. Until that time, one must take care of the body, one must take care of the prana, the senses, and the mind, the intellect, memory, all of that. It's a wise thing to do. It's fitting that we culminate with a discussion of enlightenment. So this subject that we have got, the sage of stabilized wisdom, it's a beautiful term. In the Sanskrit term is sthita pragya. Sthita means steady, stabilized. Pragya means knowledge or wisdom or enlightenment. The realization that I am pure consciousness, I am Brahman. And it is a steady realization. What do I mean by steady? Is there an unsteady realization? You know, the complaint that we hear in the path of knowledge and path of Advaita Vedanta, first of all, it would be something like, I don't get what you are saying. How am I Brahman? What is Brahman? How am I pure consciousness? Then the next thing is, it is, I'm beginning to see what is being said here, but it's all very theoretical. It doesn't seem living. And then the next stage would be, and that would be a little more advanced, would be that, I see what you are saying, and I see that it is true right now. It is living. But the thing is, I can't put it into practice. As I go out into the world and deal with people and situations, why only the world? Even myself, my body, the illness, the pains in the body, my mind, the problems that come up, the ups and downs of the mind, all of this, I find it difficult to deal with them with this, even though I understand what you mean by awareness, and I am awareness. I have no doubt about that. And then finally, the last, almost the last doubt would be, I get it. I get it's real now. I know how it's helpful, but it comes and goes. It seems that I slip back into my old mode of body-mind identification, behaving as if I am the body and mind. So you can see it's a pretty advanced question. I don't know if I'm enlightened or not, but it seems to me sometimes I forget, sometimes I just behave just the way I was all the time. I don't seem to have changed much because of that. So that final question, how do we make it a living reality? Not only a living reality, a permanent living reality, and permanent, effortlessly permanent. See, stabilized in what sense? In how much stabilized? It should be as stabilized, at least, as our present identity is. The identity that I have now as Sarvapriyananda, I noticed that it's effortless. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to practice it. I don't have to practice morning and evening, and I don't have to go to retreats or the Sarvapriyananda workshop to be Sarvapriyananda. No, I don't have to do that. That's ridiculous. I am Sarvapriyananda effortlessly so, without any practice. In fact, that's my problem, that I'm effortlessly Sarvapriyananda. Now, how can I be Satchidananda? I am Brahman, this limitless awareness. I am that equally effortlessly, at least as effortlessly as I'm Sarvapriyananda. I don't even have to think that I'm Sarvapriyananda. The moment you ask me, what's your name? I say immediately, without the least hesitation, I am Sarvapriyananda. To that kind of stability, that kind of steadiness, effortless, continuously available, without a second thought, I am Brahman. And all the benefits must flow from it. That's very important. What are the benefits? The benefits which were promised, that you will go beyond suffering. You'll be able to transcend suffering. You will be completely fulfilled. So that is the meaning of stabilized wisdom, sthita pragya. Is it possible? Certainly it is possible. So many have attained. Even today they are attaining, and in future also they will be. We will all attain it, in fact. Only thing is, if we don't make an effort for it, maybe not in this lifetime, but one day or the other, we will all come to it. Another name for this is Jivan Mukti, free while living, while being in this body. From a practical purposes, we are still in this body or present here, and yet you're free. You realize you're Brahman, and it's free while living. It's a wonderful thing to get the highest possible spiritual attainment one can get. Now, in the Gita, the second chapter, the 55th verse, Krishna talks about this. The 54th verse is Arjuna's question. Arjuna sets the stage for this discussion with a question. Actually, 4 questions. That is the 54th verse. And the answer given by Krishna is from the 55th. Actually, it's from the 55th till the 72nd, till the very end of this chapter. Swami Atmarupanji referred to this in passing earlier. It's a wonderful section to read. What does it give us? It gives us the goal we are looking towards, the state of a liberated person. See, what is it like to be liberated? One answer could be, why don't you read? I often give this answer myself. Look at the lives of the enlightened persons. You read the life of Vivekananda, Ramana Maharshi, all other enlightened beings, whomever you consider to be an advanced saint. And that's the life, but that's still from outside. What does it feel like from inside? What is it like to be enlightened? Arjuna asks this beautiful question, that what does it feel like to be enlightened, to be a Brahmagyani? That we understand from this description. But practically 2 things for us. One might ask that I am not enlightened. It doesn't apply to me. Maybe one day or the other it will be great, but right now it doesn't apply to me. No, it does apply to me. While introducing these verses in his commentary, Shankaracharya says, what is the value of this for the rest of us who are on the path, and yet we are not? We can't claim that I am sort of fully stabilized, enlightened. What is the value? That whatever are the natural characteristics of the enlightened, those are the practices for the rest of us. Shankaracharya says, Yani eva kritarthasya lakshanani, tani eva sadhakasya sadhanani. Whatever are the characteristics of the perfected sage, which are natural to the enlightened one, those give us clues, practices for the rest of us. And he says, yatna sadhyatvat, because they are attainable through an effort in spiritual practice. So that state is attainable through an effort in spiritual practice. So that's one thing we get from it. What is it that we are going towards? What practices we have to do? The second thing that we get from it is, since this is how an enlightened being feels, so I'd like to know that so that I can check whether I'm enlightened or not. That might be a little too far ahead yet. But one practical goal we can have is, many people ask this question. It's a very natural question to ask. How do I know I'm progressing? How do I know that it seems to be imperceptible? Am I on the right path? Is anything happening at all? How do I know? And this is a checklist. You can look at this and see how I am doing. So what are the questions that Arjuna asked? 1 second. Arjuna asks this question. Arjuna vacha sthita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita brajeta kim. Arjuna basically asks 4 questions. And the first question is, what is the enlightened one like in Samadhi? The next 3 questions are, what is the enlightened one like when out of Samadhi, interacting with the rest of us, interacting with the world? So 4 questions, 1 about Samadhi, the other 3 about a state called Vyutthana. So what is this Samadhi state and what's the other Vyutthana? The Samadhi state is, Sri Ramakrishna's life is a spectacular demonstration. almost every day. If you see the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, Kathamrita, the descriptions of some Sri Ramakrishna going into Samadhi and various kinds of Samadhi, but all characterized by a deep absorption in God and a complete forgetfulness of the world. And well, it is remarkable. Those who saw it, they could not forget it their whole lives. It was, in fact, so spectacular. This is one of the things which drew people to him. Like bees to a flower, they were stunned to see this person who could be immersed in God and forget the world, full of bliss, not wanting one thing from the world. Literally they would say that all the hairs of his body would stand on end when he would go into that state. And I don't know how much people were interested in Vedanta, Bhakti and all of that, but many of them would come to, how can I get that? How do I go into that state? So that's the one state. Complete absorption in the reality. It could be from a Vedantic perspective or a devotional perspective or a meditative mystic perspective, yogic perspective. And then Sri Ramakrishna would come out of it. He would pop out of it and then become aware of the external world and people. This is called vyutthana, arising from. Vyutthana means arising from. It's like you plunge into a lake and you come up again. This arising from is different from the rest of us. If you have not tasted God, if you have not ever gone beyond the limits of the limited personality and experienced the infinite, our experience of this world is the only reality that we have. So the enlightened one who comes back and experiences this world again, it's not sees the same things that we see, hears the same things that we hear, but it's not at all the way we take it to be. So it's given a special name, vyutthana. In some Vedanta, there is another word, badhitasya punaravritti. Badhita means that which has been negated, that which has been falsified, appears again. Now a false universe appears. That means it's like a magic display of the same Brahman which you experienced in Samadhi. So these are the two states. And Arjuna's question, 4 questions. 1 question about Samadhi. How would you characterize, O Krishna, the enlightened one in Samadhi? And then 3 more questions about vyutthana, coming back up. How would you characterize, O Krishna, the enlightened one, when he comes out of Samadhi? Kim prabhasheta, kim asita, vrajeta kim. First, how does this one speak? How does this one sit? How does this one walk? Now, obviously, it's not just about sitting and speaking and walking. The questions here are broader. Speaking here means, how does this one, the enlightened one, react to the world? How does this one interact with all other people? React to the different situations, pleasant and unpleasant, which will keep coming because of past karma. How is that this one's reaction different from our reactions? The way we deal with people and things and ourselves in the world, how does the enlightened one deal with that? Then walking and sitting. So here, sitting does not literally mean sitting. How does this one withdraw from the external world? And how does this one go forth and engage with the external world? Walking does not literally mean walking. It means experience the world. How does, this person still has eyes and ears. And so this person is still obviously seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking. The mind is still there. So many people have misunderstandings on this score, after enlightenment, the mind is destroyed. Really? So after becoming enlightened, you become mindless? And there's a reason for this, because the language used in some texts, manonasha, destruction of the mind. Here it means transcendence of the mind. The mind is no longer mind. It is none other than Brahman. When you recognize that the golden bracelet, every bit of it is gold. There is no separate reality called the bracelet. Then in one sense, the bracelet has been destroyed because it's nothing other than gold. In that sense, the mind is manonasha. And that mind, this is the technical meaning of manonasha there. This is from Yoga Vashishta and some other texts, where they mean the ability to completely quieten the mind and yet remain conscious. That is Samadhi. So manonasha is also Samadhi. So does this person, enlightened one, Does this person think? Does this person see, hear, smell? Yes, the enlightened one does all of that, as well as us, or even better than us. As long as the instruments of knowledge are there, knowledge will be produced, activities going on. Clearly, the enlightened one, we can see the person is eating, recognizing other people, remembers language, and everything. All those skills and knowledge are all there after enlightenment. Why this confusion is created sometimes? I remember this course on Buddhism, that you wouldn't think that enlightenment is discussed at Harvard University, but it is in great detail. And you're asked to write assignments on enlightenment, whether you're enlightened or not. Now, one topic of discussion, it was on Tibetan Buddhism. So old texts, very old texts in Tibetan translated into English. Original texts in Sanskrit, translated into Tibetan, again translated into English. At the end of the whole process, it's all incomprehensible. But things like the Buddha, the enlightened one, sees nothing, hears nothing. The enlightened one goes beyond thought. So our professor said, so what is the Buddha like after enlightenment? He called it brainstem Buddha. Brainstem Buddha. So you are in deep coma. He said, that's a very unattractive, picture of enlightenment. No, it's not like that. There are technical reasons why the language would be like that. See, for example, all that we see and hear and smell and taste and touch in this world, think about, we are inhabiting a virtual world, a world of Maya. We are not in touch with reality. We, the unenlightened. If the Buddha is enlightened, then the Buddha obviously would not have false knowledge. The Buddha would have awakened. The very name of the Buddha is awakened one. So the Buddha has awakened from this world into reality. So whatever the Buddha sees is reality. So Buddha does not have an experience of this false world of ours. So this is easily understandable from an Advaitic perspective. Once you realize that Brahman is the only reality, after that, with eyes, you will still see, but you know what you are seeing is Brahman. You still hear, taste, touch, smell, think, understand, remember, but you know all of these are manifestations of Brahman. There's one reality alone which is shining forth. That is very clear to you. So in one sense, you are not really inhabiting the world that we inhabit, a world of our conceptions, misconceptions rather. Though we seem to be seeing, hearing the same thing, talking about the same thing. So that is why the language differs. The language is done on purpose, but it can lead to misunderstanding. So the enlightened one, the simple fact is, enlightened one sees the same things we see, hears the same things we hear, can remember, can understand, can talk, interact with all of us, certainly. But the knowledge is that it's all Brahman. It's very clear to the enlightened one, or that one reality. Now, Krishna's answer to this is the 55th verse, which is the only one I will talk about, really. What is the nature of this enlightened one? Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanyevatmana Tushta Sthita Pragyastaduchyate. When this one gives up all the desires of the mind and is completely satisfied, completely serene in the self, in the Atman, then we say this person is a person of steady wisdom. So, when is a person of steady wisdom? When is a person not a person of steady wisdom? Now we are talking about an advanced state. What is this state? In Vedanta, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. You hear these truths, you study them, and then you reflect upon them, and then you meditate upon them. Now these three states, these three stages of the practice, study, reflection, meditation, have specific purposes. And many people think after the meditation is completed, you become enlightened, you get knowledge. But actually, technically, no. There's a difference among Vedanta masters on this point. There is one sub-school of Advaita Vedanta which says that, yes, knowledge, enlightenment comes after you complete study, reflection, meditation. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Finally arises enlightenment. There is another school of sub-school of Advaita Vedanta to which actually we subscribe. That's called the Vivarana school. The two schools are Bhamati school and Vivarana school. This other sub-school of Vedanta says, no, no, no. Technically speaking, if you want to be precise about it, knowledge comes from the first stage, from the Shravana, from the systematic study of Vedanta, from hearing these truths, ultimately knowledge arises, just like any other knowledge. And knowledge comes from the textbook, from the teacher, the texts and the teacher, they give you the knowledge. And then what does the second stage do? The reflection, the manana, it gives you clarity. All the information you need to know has been given to you by the Upanishads and the Gita, by Krishna and the sages and all the masters. They've given you everything that you need to know. But now our problem is, is that we don't understand. See, at the end of the first stage of study, what have we got? I know what Vedanta says. Vedanta says, I am Brahman. Like we did yesterday. All of our life is just experience. All of experience is consciousness plus object. And we are consciousness. And this consciousness, we were told, it is eternal, unchanging, and that this consciousness is not an object. It is, it is one without a second, and that this consciousness is not a doer, and so on. So these were told to us. Now we know all that is to be known. But now we have many questions, actually. The questions are, for example, how is consciousness eternal? How is consciousness not changing? And we can ask questions, I suppose the body dies, the person dies, the brain and nervous system are gone, so consciousness is gone. How is it eternal? Or I fall asleep, the consciousness is gone. How is consciousness eternal? Or I feel very sleepy after too many lectures and I feel a little less conscious. And then Sherry comes and gives us a wonderful workout and I feel more conscious. So consciousness increased and decreased. So all of these questions will come. Then when we take up these questions and these are answered, we discover the answers to these from the teachers, from the texts, to our satisfaction. Then that is the second stage, reflection. Reflection gives us clarity. First stage gives us the knowledge, the information, after which we may have many doubts. Those doubts are resolved in the second stage of reflection, mananam. At the end of the second stage, what can we say? First stage, what can we say? I know it, but I know what you want to say, but I have got many questions. At the end of the second stage, we'll say, I know what Vedanta wants to say, and I have answered all the questions. In fact, I can answer all your questions also. You will get that much confidence. Then what remains? What remains is, it still feels theoretical. I still feel like the same old person. And I have the same old problems when I deal with life. It's not a living truth for me. It's not an experienced, stabilized truth for me, let us say. I'm still generalizing. There's a slight, there's a deeper point here, which I'll make later, but still. Then you go into the third stage. The third stage is the stage of assimilation, meditation, where one dwells on what one has learned and one is convinced about. You must have learned it and be convinced about it. Then you dwell on it through Vedantic meditation. There are many techniques. You dwell on it for long hours, regularly for a long time, till it becomes a living reality for you. Swami Vivekananda says that you have to dwell on this, that I am he or I am that, till it tingles with every drop of your blood, he says, to assimilate this knowledge. Once it feels real, then you will naturally act. We always act from what we consider to be real. In the dreams, we get scared because we consider that to be real. Here, we react to the world because we consider ourselves to be the body, and that is the reality for us. That's why we react the way we do to life. Now, when I consider that I am awareness and that is my reality, My reactions to life will change, will completely change. So that change, it comes from nididhyasana. Nididhyasana, to be precise, is exactly what is required here. When you say my wisdom is not stabilized, that stabilization of wisdom will come through nididhyasana. Okay. One little, very subtle point, I won't discuss it much, but for the sake of clarity and honesty, it must be put out there. Actually, nididhyasana is also technically not for stabilizing. Stabilizing the wisdom in the sense that I am Brahman. That sometimes I feel like that, sometimes I'm not sure, I cannot act from that. The problem is still back in the first stage. Very precise teacher of classical Advaita Vedanta will tell you, not nididhyasana, you need to repeat Shravana. You see, it is like, I am Sarvapriyananda. Now I feel I'm a little shaky being Sarvapriyananda. What do I do to become stabilized in being Sarvapriyananda? If you tell me you meditate on being Sarvapriyananda, then, all right, so that's one answer. But the real answer is, you're confused. Whatever you do, you are Sarvapriyananda. It's some kind of delusion you have that you are not Sarvapriyananda sometimes you're a little less Sarvapriyananda. No, you are Sarvapriyananda choicelessly. That's our identity now. That's an example. You are Brahman choicelessly, effortlessly, now and at all times. All that Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, all that Jnana Yoga can do is to remove the confusion, the delusion that you are not God. It can to remove the delusion that you are not Brahman. That's all that is being done here. So what Nididhyasana helps you to do is to live that experience, is to not act in contrary ways. Why would one act in contrary ways? Because of past conditioning. Past conditioning is overcome by staying with this new realization. That's what Nididhyasana does. It not even stabilize. As Atman, you are already stabilized. Even if you have no Vedanta at all, you are stabilized as the Atman because you are that. Now, having said that, Prajahati Sarvan Kaman Manogatan, this one is able to give up all desires pertaining to the world, everything. How? We go out into the world with desires. Why? Because we are ignorant of our real nature. Once one is aware of one's real nature, then the ignorance goes away, all desires based on ignorance go away, and therefore all activities based on desire also go away. Remember the chain. Avidya, kama, karma. Ignorance, desire, action. So once the ignorance has been removed, I know I am the infinite. Then the desires arising from that ignorance will disappear or become much fainter, ineffective. And the actions will no longer be based on those desires. Okay. But why would desires go away? What is so amazing about this realization? Why don't I want anything more in this world? Why am I so fulfilled all the time? He says, Atmanyeva Atmana Tushta. One is fulfilled in the self by the self. In the self means in the Atman, Satchidananda, the existence, consciousness, bliss. By the self means the mind, the enlightened mind. The enlightened mind, which revels in, is centered in, is full of the radiance of our real nature. That is so full to the brim with satisfaction and happiness and contentment, it does not need anything else. Let's understand this a little more and then we'll stop. What is it that we gain because of which we don't need anything else ever for ourselves? Joy, happiness can be characterized in three categories. One is called Vishayananda, the joy from the world, worldliness joy. The other one is called Bhajanananda, spiritual joy, joy of spiritual practices. The third one is called Brahmananda, the joy of Brahman or the joy or Ananda, which is Brahman. Three. What are these three? The first one is well known. From eating a cookie to going to a concert to reading a nice book, all sorts of the joys of being with friends, all kinds of human joys, whatever the joys we have, we know in this world, which we look for continuously. That is Vishayananda. Good, that's fine. Why do we need to look any further? Because of many reasons. These ones are temporary, they come and go. These joys, they increase and decrease. These joys are not ultimately satisfying. As much as of them we gather, as many we do, they're gone at one time. After going away, there's no little bit of memories left, few selfies are left. And what is it there? And those selfies, most of the time, you will never see again, unless you want to bore some unsuspecting friend with your vacation photographs. That's it. It's gone. Somerset Maugham, I like that. He's the author of Razor's Edge. So he says, in one place, he says that if you single-mindedly pursue pleasure, very soon you will find nothing pleasing anymore. And that you see people going out and partying hard all weekend long. And very soon they get bored of the whole thing, no matter how much you do, how much you enjoy. Now, there is a higher and deeper joy, the joy of spirituality, the joy of selflessness, not selfishness, selflessness, the joy given by karma yoga, the joy of devotion, the joy of loving God, the infinite, the most beloved, the most perfect, those who have tasted even a little bit of that. We are pretty much a godless world, so devotion is much less these days, but those who have it are very lucky, very, very lucky. That fills your life with deep peace and satisfaction and security also. So the joy of bhakti. Then a deep joy, the joy of silence, calmness, even beyond bhakti. At least once or twice in a day, when the mind completely shuts down and you're free of the mind in deep meditation, the deepest possible rest, the deepest possible silence, that joy. That is the joy of yoga or Raja Yoga. And finally, the joy of Jnana Yoga, of your own infinite nature. When you meditate on that and you try to understand the joy you get in Vedantic thought, or in Vedantic inquiry, even before enlightenment. This is called Bhajanananda, the joy of spiritual practices, the joy of a spiritual life. A devout person, a spiritual person, whether a monk or a nun or a householder, will get at least some of this joy. Notice this joy is the joy of spirituality is predicated upon, is also based upon distancing yourself from the earlier one. Certain amount of less involvement, certain amount of vairagya, a dispassion for worldliness is necessary. You see, I want to maximize my joy, so let me have the joy of Vishayananda plus the joy of Bhajanananda. Won't work. Let me have the joy of partying all Saturday and meditating all Sunday. Won't work. You will ruin your meditation, or you'll ruin the party. They are polar opposites. Fortunately or unfortunately, the same energies which flow out in 100 different channels. See, how can you combine little bit of selfishness, little bit of selflessness? They're opposites. How can you combine 100 different desires thrown out into the world and the desire for God? It is the same power of desire. See, what is the difference between kama and bhakti? Desire, passion, lust, and love of God. It's the same thing which goes out in 100 channels into the world, that is gathered and focused towards God. So if it goes out that way, it will not go this way. If it goes this way, you will not feel like letting it run the other direction. So the two are incompatible. Then meditation, the joy of peace and quiet and inwardness, you can clearly see. And the joy of excitement and thrills and wows and selfies and all. How can these two be combined? And the joy of Brahman and the world, one is false, one is real. How can you combine the two? So Vairagya, Those who know the Taittiriya Upanishad, you can see I'm literally telling you what's there in the Taittiriya Upanishad, the second chapter, the end of it. It is called an analysis of joy, of Ananda Mimamsa. That's what I'm talking about. But as we go on in spiritual life, Vedanta tells us there's something higher. Even spiritual joy, it increases and it decreases. It is subject to your spiritual practice. There is something which is permanent, infinite, and effortless, which is you yourself. Vedanta tells us all these joys which we are experiencing and which we are running after, whether in the world unwisely or in spiritual life wisely, all of that, they are actually all you. It's a reflection of your own reality. It's like we set out a set of mirrors in a barber's shop, a set of mirrors, and they all reflect your face. Mirrors may be of different qualities and the reflections will be of different qualities, but they are all reflecting your face. One kind of mirror is worldly joys. The other, much better kind of mirror is a spiritual joy, which gives a more truer reflection of reality, our own face. But the source of all of that is your own face. Why do you need to reflect it in a mirror all the time? You may when you want to, but once you realize it's not the mirror which is important. It's not even the reflection which is important. All that the mirror does is show me a little bit of what I am. If once I realize this, that it's all here, not there in the mirror, worldly mirror of mind mixed up with worldliness, purified mirror, the spiritual mind, and no mirror, no mind required. I am joy itself. I don't require a mind and a sensory system and a body to be happy. No, I am, Swami Vivekananda puts it this way. This is Brahmananda. What's the difference? It's not that it is happy. It is happiness itself. What is Brahman? It's not that it exists. It's existence itself. It's not that it is conscious or knows. It is consciousness itself. Similarly, it's not that Brahman is very happy. It is happiness itself or joy itself. There's really no other way to express it. Language begins to fail, and this is at the margin of language. So this is called Ananda, and the Taittiriya Upanishad says this Ananda is infinitely greater than all of that worldly happiness and the spiritual happiness. And all of that worldly happiness and spiritual happiness are just so many different reflections of this Ananda. So the one who has got Brahmananda, who has become enlightened, realizes I am Ananda. And only little bits of that are experienced. Very little in a muddy form by the worldly person, much more so by the saintly person, and infinitely more so by the enlightened one. There are technical differences there. I will not go into that. I'll just say this much and stop. So Swami Brahmananda, one day, somebody, a devotee, Swami Brahmananda was the president of the Ramakrishna order, a devotee comes to him and says, bows down to him and says, Swami, you're so great. You have sacrificed all the joys of the world, Vishayananda, you become monks to realize God, such a great sacrifice. He bowed down. And Swami Brahmananda bowed down even more deeply to him. Oh, you are a greater renouncer than me. I have given up bits of glass for the diamond, and you have given up the diamond for bits of glass. Your renunciation is far greater than mine. So there he's talking about the comparison between the pleasures of the world and spiritual joy. Beyond that, of course, what his own name, Brahmananda. So Vishayananda, Bhajanananda, Brahmananda. Krishna says here, why is it that this enlightened being, the wisdom is stabilized? How is it stabilized? It's stabilized because Atmannevatmanatushta. This person realizes that I am Brahmananda. There's literally nothing that the world can give me, because whatever the world gives me is borrowed from me. The world borrows it from me and then throws it back in my face again. And I am ever so grateful to the world. You've given me a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of money, a little bit of praise, a little bit of status, appreciation. No, I don't depend on any of that at all. I'm completely free of dependence on the world, on this body, on anything, anyone. That complete freedom. One of the Upanishads, Panchadashi puts it this way. Why is the one of stabilized wisdom so happy? Why is the liberated one so happy? Imagine having got whatever there was to get in life, one. Having known whatever there was to know in life, achieved what is there to be achieved in life, and having known what is there to be known in life. In Sanskrit, praptavya praptataya, whatever has to be got in life, you have got it. Whatever is to be achieved in life, kritakritya, has been done. Whatever has to be known in life, gyatavya gyatataya, whatever has to be known in life has been known. And all of these three, the answer to all of these three is Brahman. What you wanted to get was infinity, everything. So this young man who wanted to become a monk, somebody asked him, don't you want all of these things? Why are you running away to become a monk? He says, no, I want everything. It's not that I'm giving up things. I don't want things. No, I want everything. That's why I'm becoming a monk. So I have got everything means Brahman, the one reality which appears as everything. Then what has to be achieved in life? Freedom from suffering, attainment of eternal peace, God realization, liberation. This one has done it. And then finally, what has to be known in life? Upanishad says, what is that one thing by knowing which everything here is known? In the Mundaka Upanishad, the student goes to the master and says, sir, tell me that one thing by knowing which I can know everything. It says, Kasminno bhagavo vigyate sarvamidam vigyatam bhavati iti. Sir, what is knowing that one thing by knowing which everything is known? We can all of us supply the answer. Oh, it must be Brahman. It's pretty easy. In Vedanta, the answer is always Brahman, or failing that, it must be Maya. So, yes, having attained that, nothing more is necessary. That knowledge stabilizes wisdom. So the wisdom will not flicker anymore. Nothing in the world can disturb you. You will deal with the world, whatever is to be done, you'll deal with it in the family, with your personal affairs, with the world, in your work, and you'll deal with it with entire calmness. I think I told you the story of Chudala yesterday, the queen who ruled the kingdom with utter calmness after attaining enlightenment, yet fully engaged in the work of the world. One can do that. All right, so this is the sage of stabilized wisdom. And Krishna goes on with this description until the end of this chapter. It's a very beautiful section. The 72nd verse, let me just read it out and I'll stop. Esha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati sthitva syamanta kalepi brahma nirvanam richati. O Arjuna, this is the state of Brahman. Once you attain this, you can never be deluded again, never come back into samsara. Nothing of this will ever be repeated again. If you get this even for an instant at the point of death also, physical death, even at that point, till that point there is hope of becoming enlightened. At that point also, if you get it even for an instant, Brahma nirvanam richati. You attain nirvana in Brahma. You attain moksha, nirvana, you become the infinite. Okay. I think we can questions now.
Are you ready for? We've got 5 minutes for questions.
Some questions. Yes.
Yes. Is the Vedantic realization, realizing the self as Brahman, is that different from Nirvikalpa Samadhi?
Yes, it is different.
Can you explain the difference?
Yeah. So there is a difference. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, or in the yogic tradition, Asampragyata Samadhi, is a means to it. The yogic approaches, Patanjali yoga approaches, if you still the mind, then that which is beyond the mind becomes clear. You can put it as simply as that. Swami Vivekananda says he compares the mind to a lake. Now, if the waters of the lake are still and clear, then you can see all the way through to the bottom of the lake. Now, these two conditions are important. The waters have to be clear. Clear means not muddy, means the mind has to be pure. If the mind is turbulent with desires, then it is not clear. The second thing is the waters have to be steady. If it's continuously breaking out into waves and ripples, then you can't see through to the bottom. So the mind has to be steady. That means calm, concentrated, not breaking out into thoughts, feelings, perceptions, ideas. So this is Samadhi. When one attains this, that which is at the bottom of the mind lake, beyond the mind lake, shining upon the mind lake, that consciousness it becomes clear. I am that. At other times, it's not clear. Why is it not clear? The Yoga Sutra says, Vritti Sarupyam Itaratra. Other than this calm state of the mind, whatever happens in the mind, you, the consciousness, you get mixed up with it. Anger arises. I am angry. We don't say, I am the unruffled, pure, infinite awareness shining upon a little ripple of anger in the mind. No, we don't say that. I'm mad at you. That's what we say. We get mixed up with the ripples in the mind. And that's why the yogis say, calm the mind down through meditation. And to the extent of absolutely stilling the mind, then you will see the light which shines through the mind, but which is other than the mind. And you are that light. You are not the mind. But this is the yogic way. The Advaitic way is that all that is very good, but whether the mind is active or not active, you are consciousness. Whether the movie is playing on the screen or not playing on the screen is exactly the same. See, when a movie is playing and you see all pictures on the screen, but if you go up and touch any of the pictures, any of the heroes or the places which are being shown in the movie, you go and touch. What will you touch? Not a place or a person. You will touch the screen. But there's only the screen there all the time. So what is required in Advaitic approach is not so much the stilling of the mind as using the mind to clear up the confusion in the mind. There is ignorance in the mind, and the ignorance has to be cleared up through knowledge in the mind. And the knowledge is generated not by stilling the mind. It is generated by exactly what we are doing. Study, contemplation, meditation. Study, reflection, meditation. That will give rise to that moment of clarity. Then whether the mind is still, very good, nothing better than that. If the mind is active, no problem there either. Active mind, still mind, samadhi mind, mind which is busy with the world. In both cases, you see there's one reality which is Brahman. This will become clear. But these are two mindsets, I would say. To some, the Vedantic mindset applies more. To some, the meditative mindset applies more. I met this young monk in the mountains once, many years ago, 16 years ago. Very promising young Swami from Nepal. And he was practicing Patanjali yoga, trying to attain Samadhi. He used to meditate in a cave. So I asked him, I'm of course always a little partial to Vedanta. So I asked him, well, all that's good. What about Vedanta? Have you studied Vedanta? Upanishads, commentaries of Shankaracharya and all. So he said, oh yes, they talk a lot. They don't have any realization. So, I mean, if he saw this retreat workshop, he would have said exactly the same thing. See, they're talking. They're just talking. They aren't meditating. In Hindi, he said, बहुत बात करते हैं, अनुभूति नहीं है उन लोगों का. They talk too much. That's a yogic mindset. Is meditation useful? Samadhi useful for Vedanta? Useful, yes. Crucial, no.